right, so Didier's question involves two indicators, the EMA and then the ADXVMA custom indicator here. And so I'm going to use the one from Lizard Trader. So I think this is the most common ADXVMA out there for NinjaTrader, is coming from Lizard Trader, right? So it's the AMA one. So let's add that on there. And let's see, Didier wants to use a 2 period. Okay. All right, so 2 period ADXVMA, and the EMA is a 9 period. So let's get that on the chart. All right, so we have the EMA 9 period, the blue line, and then we have the ADXVMA here, the red and blue line. So actually, let me change the color of our EMA. Let's just make it white. All right, EMA is white, ADXVMA is red and blue. So Didier wants to generate an exit signal when the slopes differ from each other. So for example, so on this bar, we can see the slopes change, right? So previously, on these bars, right, the EMA is sloping down and the ADXVMA is sloping down. And yeah, maybe I should change my bar type here. Let's let's use something that's a little more chaotic, like a minute chart. There we go. Yeah, let's use a minute chart. And yeah. All right. So we can see here the EMA is sloping down and the ADXVMA is sloping down. And so if one of the moving averages differs from the other, that's when he wants to use or generate an exit signal. So, all right. And let's see. Didier says he's using a 4-range chart. Okay. We'll switch over to a 4-range chart. There. So we can see that the ADXVMA is sloping up and our EMA is sloping up. But then right here, right on this bar, the ADXVMA goes flat. So the EMA is still sloping up, but the ADXVMA goes flat. So there's a difference between the two slopes of these two moving averages. And that's when Didier wants to generate an exit signal. So, all right, let's do that. All right, so we want an exit when the ADXVMA and the EMA have different slopes. So we will need a couple of slope solvers to begin with. So remember, from the previous questions, right, we have other time frames here. So we're going to go to the default time frame. That way we're looking at the slopes of those moving averages, right, on our 4-range chart. So the 4-range chart that BloodHound is running on, that is always the default time frame, is whatever the chart is. So default time frame, let's grab slope solver. There's one. All right, so we'll find the slope of the ADXVMA 2 period. So we'll just change our indicator to the ADXVMA. All right, so we're going to go to Lizard Indicators. And there's our ADXVMA. All right. So you can, if you don't have this indicator, you can download the ADXVMA from Futures.io. There's a version of this on Futures.io, but the latest version is going to be on Lizard Indicators website. Right? So if you go to lizardindicators.com and look in their free section, you can find the ADXVMA there. All right, ADXVMA. change the period to 2. And there we go. So there's the ADXVMA. Right? Pretty straightforward. So, oh yeah, here we go. Keep in mind that sometimes, even though the ADXVMA might look flat, but every once in a while it does have a very, very small slope to it. Right, so right there, it is sloping up ever so gradually. So, all right, so there's that one done. So let's grab another slope solver here. And this will be the EMA 9 period. All right, and again, let's go change the indicator. And adjust the period. All right, so this is the slope of the EMA. Again, the white line here. And all right, so I put both of the slope solvers into an AND node. And so now what we're seeing is when the slope of both moving averages match each other, when they're both the same, right? So if there's a short output, then we know both moving averages are sloping down. If there's no output, then we know that, if there's no output, then we know the slopes do not match each other. And of course, if there's a long output, then both the moving averages are sloping up together. So what Didier is interested in is the areas where there is no output, right? So if we look at BloodHound, right, there's no output there, right? No output there. That's what he's interested in. So to find that, I'm going to do a couple of things here. To find that, I'm going to use the inverter. So with the inverter, if you look now, right, we have a long and a short output on the bars where there was no output, right? So we have long and short together, right? And then on the other bars, so when the moving averages are both sloping up together, right, it's been inverted into a short signal now. But we're going to get rid of the short, and we're going to get rid of the long only, and get rid of the short only. So what we want to keep is the long and short together. When there's a long and short on the same bar, we want to keep that output on those bars and get rid of. So we want to get rid of the output when there's only a short or only a long. So we'll get rid of that. And to do that, I'm going to use the long short modifier to do that. And so the mode, which mode do I want? Product, right? Product, which is multiplication, multiplier. And so what the product does is it takes the long output and multiplies it by the short output. And what we see is we're left with what we want, right? We're left with those bars that had no output. Yeah. All right, so let's take a comparison. Right, so that's what we had before. So this is when the moving averages are both sloping in the same direction. And so we want to identify the bars where there's no output, right, where the slopes disagree with each other. And that is what we're left with there, right? So just to kind of explain, you know, how the product is working, right? Let's take a look at our inverter, right? So the long short modifier is using the mode product. So what that is doing is, let's see here. So that is taking the long output and multiplying it by the short output, right? And so what's the long output on these bars? It's 0, right? There is no long output, so the output is 0. The value is 0. So 0 times anything equals 0. So that's how the long short modifier strips out the short only and the long only, because it's taking 0 of one side and multiplying it times the other side, and 0 times anything is 0, right? And so where we do have the long and short, right, the long output is 1, the short output is 1, and 1 times 1 is 1. So that's how we keep the long and short together, right? So where there is no output, the inverter creates an output, right? So now there is long and short right there. And then the long short modifier removes the long only and the short only. All right, so there we have it.